Welcome to Talking with the Experts. This is where we discuss great ideas to take your business to the next level. How do we know these ideas work? Well, it's because we're talking with business owners who are using these ideas. Business owners who have years of experience and expertise. All things business by business owners for business owners. And now, here is your host, Rose Davidson.
Hi, I'm Rose Davidson from Talking with the Experts. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Global Glamping Charities for their valued support. Global Glamping Charities, solving homelessness in all its forms. Reach out to them at globalglamping.org.
Talking with the Experts.
In episode 445, Dr. Heidi Gregory-Mina explores how AI is being developed to mimic human emotions and the potential benefits and drawbacks.
I think what we're going to see is we are going to see another shift in the type of work that we're doing. So we already saw a major shift when we moved from blue collar workers into really a lot more white collar type jobs. And I think now what you're going to be seeing is these white collar jobs are going to transition even further to now you need to be creative and you need to be innovative and you need to be able to bring that to the table because the rest of that work is going to be done by AI. And the problem that I see is that as it begins at childhood, it really does. And that's where we need to already be thinking about our next generation of employees.
Talking with the Experts.
Hello, welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. You can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. Today, my guest is Dr. Heidi Gregory-Mina. And Heidi, I have a great pleasure to introduce you to, is a business psychologist. She's a professor and she is an author. She brings a unique combination of academic expertise and real-world experience to her clients and to her readers. Her services are designed to help individuals and organisations improve their performance and achieve their goals through better understanding of the science of human behaviour. And I love human behaviour. I love the science behind that. It's absolutely amazing. Today, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence because that seems to be the flavour of the month at the moment, you know, the pros and the cons of it. Dr. Heidi, thank you so much for joining me today. It's such a pleasure to meet you.
Well, thank you, Rose. I'm so happy that you are having me on and I'm looking forward to our discussion together.
Terrific. So tell me a little bit behind what the science of human behaviour is as far as in the workplaces or in business.
Sure, absolutely. So, you know, what we study is pretty much the interactions of why we do the things we do, but within the workplace setting. So we focus a lot on the individual person, their level of emotional intelligence, their ability to work with people from other cultures and different diversities. And we also do a lot of workplace training in terms of understanding the difference between groups and teams, how different sizes of teams need to be managed differently in terms of productivity. We look at organizational culture and structure and how that's really driven from a top-down approach, but then also empowering people to learn how to talk up the ladder, so to say, as well. So we really do cover a wide spectrum of topics, but it's all around the individual in the workplace, understanding how they tick, why they do the things we do, and then how do managers and leaders understand this and identify these things in their employees so they can understand better how to motivate them, how to keep them engaged in the organization, reducing ultimately turnover and keeping productivity high.
Yeah, that's all very important. I like the fact that you discuss with organisations the difference between the different generations that they employ within their organisation. I think they operate in such different in different ways, and their mindsets and interactions with others is so different. We didn't notice it a long time ago, between generations, because they were all pretty much the same. But now there is such a diverse group of people that there's no one size fits all.
Exactly. And I think, with the growth of technology and our virtual environments, it's bringing not only the diversity of the generations together, it's bringing the diversity of the cultures and the individuals. So you're seeing the cultural differences with the gender differences, which, as you just mentioned, is vast these days. And also, not only from the employee perspective, but also from the consumer perspective. And how do we, as, employees within an organization, also look at that externally and figure out how do we engage with our consumers more, because that's ultimately what they're demanding. They want an emotional connection with the people that are providing their products, their services, and they want to feel like they're part of the process. They don't want to just look at something and say, okay, I'm going to buy this and I'm done with it. They want a continuous relationship.
Yeah, I totally agree. And years ago, when I was in a government organisation, we made people fit into the mould. We didn't allow people to be outside of the mould. And to me, I used to buck the system all the time, because I wouldn't let them fit me into a mould. I was always the round peg in the square hole. And it didn't win me any favours amongst the management, trust me.
I can understand that.
But anyway, I survived, and so I'm still here to tell the tale. Heidi, artificial intelligence has been around for a little while now, but I have noticed, especially since the start of this year, how prevalent it is and being pushed by social media and the likes of Google with their chat GTP, which I've got to say quietly, I absolutely love it.
I do too.
If you put the right words in there, they write you, excellent copy. And, I've tried others, the AI like copy.ai, and I've tried Jasper and all of those. And whilst they are very good, I think ChatGPT is just an absolutely game changer.
Yeah.
But how is this going to help us? Firstly, we'll talk about the helping side. How is it going to help us, with our business in the short term and perhaps in the longer term?
So in the short term, I think what you're going to see is, I think the best thing it can really help you with is writing clearer, more concisely, especially where we are in this more virtual environment. We're not doing a lot of face-to-face communication anymore. We're trying to do a lot of things through quick chats or through a quick email. Yes, we might get on and have the occasional Zoom meetings with somebody to try to engage and get that face-to-face, but the written is becoming much more prevalent again. And I think it's helping people to edit their work before they send it out, give it a little bit more clarity, and just make sure that it's being perceived the way they want it to be perceived. So I think in the short term, it helps in that sort of manner. I think in the longer term, as the algorithm grows and as it's going through what we call the free period right now, where it's learning, I think you're going to see the capabilities of what it can do in terms of analytics and helping you to actually get to decision making and cutting down processing time. I think you're going to see that over time growing by leaps and bounds. And I think that's ultimately going to save organizations a lot, because we spend countless hours processing data, looking through things, trying to make decisions. And this can really cut through a lot of that. I mean, it still needs to have that human aspect at the end of the day, really looking at this and making the decision. And one of the things the algorithm is going to lack is that emotional connection to things and that ability to add emotions in. And so, but I think if it can help speed up the process, especially even now where we're facing such a labor shortage, it's going to take a lot of time and tasks off of people's plates that can be automated, allowing them to do more of, what we call left brain work, which is, creative, innovative, bringing new things to market that we haven't seen before. And we can allow for more of that to happen while, the AI kind of takes more of that right brain analytical type work for us. So I think, as a business psychologist, I definitely am in the mindset this is wonderful. As an MIS person, I think this is wonderful. I think it's going to go in great ways, help a lot. As the professor side of me, I have my trepidations in terms of wanting to ensure that my students are still learning, but also learning the right things. So the big question for our industry has really been, this is here to stay. How do we address it? And how do we now, what are we measuring our students' success based on? So it's going to impact every industry very different. And education's not going to be any different than any other industry in terms of how it's going to impact and the questions that we have to answer.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the short term, because it is still learning, and some of the responses you get back really could, have a lot of improvement done to them. However, in the academic world, there's a lot of room for improvement in that thing, that and not improvement so much, but awareness that, was it written by the person or was it written by AI? And, are there checks and balances that that can be put into place to make sure that it is actually the authentic work of the writer?
Right. And I know that Turnitin and I believe a couple other companies are about ready to implement something into their software that's supposed to be able to pick up that, exactly what you just said, if the student wrote it authentically or if it was written by the AI. The only thing I'm not sure how that's going to work is if somebody really did write something authentically and then put it through there for grammar, punctuation. I feel like that's an asset. I mean, it's just like sending it to an editor or working with the school's writing department to check things before you submit it to your professor. So I don't know how that technology is going to pick up the difference between, yes, this went through an AI system, but did it really go through an AI system to write it or just to edit it? That for me is the big question.
Yeah, and whether there's a code attached to the actual writing somehow that would differentiate it between an AI and an authentic piece. That's I guess something that someone has to work out.
Absolutely.
So in the longer term, how can AI help a business? I mean, we've talked about the short term and how, it takes things off people's plates, but in the longer term, what benefits would you see in business having AI attached to whatever they're doing?
I think we really have to look at that from an industry to industry perspective, because it would vary greatly. But, take healthcare, for instance. And, there's a lot of, everybody thinks healthcare, doctor has to be in the office, or surgery, the surgeon has to be there. Those things obviously aren't going to change, but it's the back side of things that are going to change greatly. The admin work that goes in, the processing of claims, the writing of research grants, things like that. AI is going to automate a lot of those things, be able to write a lot of that for you. Again, as you mentioned, proofing it for accuracy, making sure it's exactly what you want. But if you put enough good information into it, it can produce you something pretty rapid fire. And it's something then that you can utilize to submit and saves you countless hours that frees up time to do other things. Then you look at, like an industry like finance, report writing, generation of financial statements, things like that. It saves so much time. In computer science, writing coding, all of a sudden you wrote this new set of code and it's not working and you can't figure out why. You put that code into the AI, and what might have just taken you 2-3 weeks to figure out, they figure it out in 30 seconds and showed you where the mistake was in the code. So I think that's really long-term what we're looking at. I know the biggest question that a lot of people are probably scared about and nervous about, and I know talk about, is how is this going to displace jobs for people? And should we be worried that there's going to be even fewer jobs available? And I don't believe that to be the case. I think what we're going to see is we are going to see another shift in the type of work that we're doing. So we already saw a major shift when we moved from blue collar workers into really a lot more white collar type jobs. And I think now what you're going to be seeing is these white collar jobs are going to transition even further to now you need to be creative and you need to be innovative and you need to be able to bring that to the table, because the rest of that work is going to be done by AI. And the problem that I see is that as it begins at childhood, it really does. And that's where we need to already be thinking about our next generation of employees. Children are naturally inquisitive, naturally innovative and creative. But as they go through proper education channels and they go up through, that's tempered a lot. It's not always encouraged. And a lot of children over the years, especially as they get into higher education, it's all about research and, writing academically and not bringing creativity to the table, but very transactional type writing. And by the time you're done with all that, the thought of going back to being creative and innovative and what does that mean for you? It's very different. So I think we absolutely need to start with the younger generation to make sure the curriculum is being built in such a way that this creative and this creativity and this innovation is fostered, not deplenished. And that needs to go all the way through to higher education, whether it's a master's degree, a doctorate, or just an undergraduate, or some other type of technical training. It needs to go to that level because they need to bring that skill set fully developed into the workplace to be able to handle the type of work that you're going to be seeing in the future.
Yeah, I agree. Creativity is sort of pounded out of children, isn't it? And
absolutely.
I remember the government organisation I worked with. I was told that I had to write more as a public servant rather than as an author, because I used to write very descriptively, and they didn't. It was too many words for them to read. So and so now. I don't write descriptively. I just write, very basically so it's understood. And I regret that now because, I used to love being descriptive and, using all those adjectives and things to describe whatever was going on. But, so it's even in the workplace, when I was working, it was frowned upon to be creative. And I think that it's such a shame because, creativity is a lost art.
It really is. And I know over the years it was driven out of me. And I even remember when I first started my career into teaching, I was mentored by somebody who amazingly creative and innovative person. So I got very lucky. And the first thing he said to me was, you need to loosen up. And these are not all doctoral students. And I remember that sticking with me, and he really helped. And I have to say, it was almost a skill having to relearn. And it's still a skill I work on. I don't think I will ever get back to what I was, but I'm definitely much further along that path again than I was before. But I do flip between the technical standard type of writing because, journal articles that I produce for research has to be written like that. Grants that I write have to be written like that. But then there's the author side of me who want to give back to the students something that they desperately want. And that is a book not solely based on theory. They want a book that tells a story and connects the practical application to the theoretical. So basically connecting the classroom to the real world. And that's what they want. And there's not a lot of textbooks out there that do that. So that's one of the things I try to bring in my writing. So it's almost like a hybrid that I'm writing at times, where I'm writing a little technical and then I'm getting a little creative all at the same time and trying to blend the two. And then I have a children's book series that I do because I want to get back into that creative element, and kind of flipping the switch on all those things can, sometimes you really have to sit down and get yourself into the mindset.
Yeah. And I found, education isn't geared towards creativity, as you said before, and and they don't prepare children or young adults for the real world. There's education is just very cut and dried, and things like algebra and different theories. Hell, unless you're going to be a scientist, why is learning those skills important? Why isn't education geared towards real life skills that you need when you leave school and go out on your own? I think education worldwide really needs to change, because they're not preparing our young people for the real world at all. They don't teach them budgeting. If you don't learn these skills at home, you have no idea how to write a resume, a job application. You don't know how to budget. You don't know any other life skills of living on your own. You've got to cook and clean and do all sorts of other things. And if these things aren't taught at home, where else are you going to learn them other than at school? And I think these things need to be part of the curriculum.
Absolutely. And I know when I was teaching my nonprofit finance class, the very first time I taught it for Northeastern, I was teaching debits and credits. And so I came in, I talked a little bit about the theory. We talked about, T-charts and, all of the fun theoretical things that go into it. And then I said, all right, let's practice this. And you could see the rolling of the eyes and okay. And so out of my bag, which I had hidden under the table because I didn't want anyone to see, I pull out these games of Monopoly. And I said, okay, we're going to play Monopoly. And I had one student actually turn to me and they said, is this a joke? And I said, no. And they're like, you're the best professor ever. And I said, well, don't get too excited. I said, there's a learning part to this. I said, I have redone the game. And they looked at me and I said, we're going to be booking every transaction throughout the game to your chart of accounts. And that's how they started to learn it. They played, it was game theory. So they played a game, but every transaction they had a book as a team. There were 4 or 5 of them on the board. They would help each other figure out how to book it, ask me questions. I would go between them. And when they came out, they just had such a broader understanding for the concept than they did if I had just sat there and just kept lecturing about this account is your assets and this account is that. No one's going to learn that way. They really don't.
That's how I learned. That's how I was taught. And it was so boring. It turned me off being anything to do with numbers. I so dislike now. Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about Leap Forward Publishing, Heidi. It's very interesting. What does Leap stand for, and what is it? What kind of books do you publish?
Sure, absolutely. So Leap really is just the idea of taking that plunge, taking a chance on yourself. Because one of the things that has always held me back throughout my entire career is the fact that I am an extreme introvert, but I do a lot of extroverted behaviors. And so risk-taking is something that's really difficult for me. It's one step at a time, or as I like to say, one little leap at a time forward. So it kind of came about from that sort of concept, but I wanted something that had a unique niche to it. And because of my nonprofit background and knowing that the current generation, as we were talking about generations, thrives on philanthropy and social causes and things like that, I felt it very important to have something connected into the publishing house like that. So we publish, right now we're publishing in the children's genre and the nonfiction genre right now. We are going to look to expand, but the ultimate goal right now is 2 programs that we're running. One is get a book, give a book, and that goes with our children's books. So any children book that is purchased through the publishing house's website through this particular program, one book is given to the person who bought it. Another book is donated to a nonprofit organization that has a literacy program directly serving youth in underserved communities. And so the books get into kids' hands, whether it be through a library, whether it be through this classroom, but it gets into their hands and they're able to read a book, feel a book, touch a book, and have that level of literacy fulfilled. And then
that's amazing.
Isn't it great? Like, it just makes me feel so energized, even just thinking about, because I literacy, education, everything comes together in these programs for me. And then on the other side of the spectrum, it's called Make a Difference. And it's very similar. It's just a little bit differently scoped. And that's basically a percentage of every sale purchased through that program goes to a nonprofit that focuses on adult literacy and promoting adult literacy, because I feel if an adult can be a good role model for a child and can learn to help their family get ahead by bringing up their literacy, being able to get a better paying job, it's just going to help the communities that much more grow and expand. So those are the two programs that we have. So anybody that publishes with us do have to agree that they are going to be that they will be published, but that part of their book sales will be going through those programs. And that's very near and dear to my heart. And that's why I like to think that it's a little bit different than your normal publishing house, because we do have these programs to give back to our communities.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I think it's awesome. It's such a worthwhile project, both of them. I think yes, everyone should be on board and giving back to the community, because I know a lot of children, don't like to read because, they're not read to at home, or, they might be dyslexic, they don't understand, so they put in the too hard basket. So, anything that will help them to be able to read, because it's really important now. I mean, it wasn't so much, years ago you could get away with it, but you can't now. You need to be able to read. You need to be able to write and spell and do all those things that weren't necessary 20 or 30 years ago.
Right. I mean, it's such a critical skill, and it's very unfortunate because the families that do come from underserved areas and don't have a lot of discretionary dollars for spending in their budget, books unfortunately fall into that category when they're deciding between, getting food, paying for heat, paying for gas for the car. So those families don't get the books. And so we need to ensure that if the kids aren't getting it at home, that the school systems have the proper books that are there. And through this program, it not only supplies them with the books, but gives an opportunity for a child like that to bring a book home, and hopefully encourages then a parent to read to them and continue doing those things outside of the classroom.
Now, is this a global program, or is it just for the US?
So right now, our short-term goal is expanding here in the US. Our long-term goal is to outreach to other programs, especially in third world countries. And there it'll be even a little bit more critical, because it won't be so much even about building literacy programs. It'll be all the way down to building the infrastructure first and foremost, because there's a lot of third world countries that don't have schools, that don't have proper desks, that don't have even water connected to the schools. And if you can't even have those basic necessities, you can't even begin to start teaching and learning. So eventually we do want to go in that direction. We have some strong connections through our work at Northeastern in the nonprofit program. We do have some strong connections overseas with some groups that do work in these areas. And so we're excited to be able to expand to that part, but that's going to be the second phase of the program.
Oh, excellent. It's good to hear that. It's because third world countries really are in need of
absolutely
help, especially the war-torn ones where, schools have been destroyed and kids aren't being educated because there's nowhere for them to go.
Exactly. Absolutely.
So I guess in finishing up, what are your thoughts on AI overall, basically, and how would we, how can we work better with it?
Overall, I'll be quite honest. My first thoughts was, no, we shouldn't be doing this, because it almost felt, and I think that's the educator in me, I think it almost felt wrong. Like I should just be doing this on my own. I shouldn't be having an AI assist me with this. But then I really thought about it and I said, this is no different than when I write something or I craft something and I have a colleague review it, or I pay an editor to edit something. But it does then beg to differ the question as to what happens to those jobs down the line if AI is taking it over, and how are those jobs going to have to pivot? And I think people need to start being a little bit more proactive rather than waiting around to see and be reactive. I think they need to understand what's coming and how it's going to impact them, and how they can start expanding their channels and go in different directions. So when that day does really come, that people are choosing AI for certain aspects of a job over an actual human doing it, that they're ready to pivot and rotate and can just move into a different area, rather than being in a position where we have massive layoffs, or, people that are just completely unemployed and don't know what to do with themselves. So I think, having these discussions around it, putting the information out there, bringing awareness to the forefront rather than just kind of ignoring that it's there, I think is really important. And having these open discussions about it, and people being open to recognizing, all right, how is this going to impact me and the work that I do, and what can I start doing now to pivot, change, and be ready for the full impact of this?
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, I love to be, I love being a first adopter. I will absolutely try anything when it first comes out onto the marketplace, if it's suits me what I'm doing. And I think AI is here for the long term, and yes. I don't think overall there will be a lot of job losses, because you will still need people to review work and edit work and do things, because AI, let's face it, isn't perfect. I don't think it's ever going to be perfect. You still need the grammar, the punctuation, all of those things that AI can't do, because it's artificial. It's not a real person, and so they don't really think, do they? And
no, they don't. And I pushed its limits one night, just as a professor, just to see, if I push in content, how accurate is it? And I would say, like, for the most part, on some of the theory, it was good, but then there were some things that had a real long history within the business psychology world. And as I kind of read its thoughts on the history, or where it pulled for information from, there were definitely some things that weren't 100% accurate. And that's where I get nervous, because it's like a more advanced Wikipedia. It's like, can you trust the information that's being given to you? And I worry that students or professionals may look at it and may not know that the information isn't correct, and trust that it is. And then they're presenting something that isn't quite 100% accurate.
Yeah, and I think that comes down to, personal choice, if they choose to do that, and reading the information, and
exactly.
If you don't, I made the mistake once of copying and pasting something and putting it up, and then I reread it back and I thought, oh my God, that's not quite true. So I had to delete the post and then rewrite it. Just because I don't like to be inaccurate in anything. So you need to write it. Don't just trust the AI that it's going to be 100%, because it's not going to be. It's pulling stuff out of different articles, and it's a mishmash of stuff. So
exactly.
Just be mindful. Heidi, where can people find you if they want to know more about you, know more about LEAP, know more about your programs?
Sure. On Facebook, I'm Dr. Heidi, the business psychologist. Instagram, I'm at Dr. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm not at Doctor. Instagram didn't let me keep that one. At Heidi Gregory-Mina on Instagram. And then I have my website, www.drheidigregorymina.com. And my email address is simply drheidi.gregory-mina@gmail.com.
Perfect. Heidi, it has been an absolute pleasure. I could probably talk to you all day.
I could too.
I would love to have you on again later on in the year, if you were happy to do that. I think what you bring is great information, and so on point. It's great, and it's going to be of benefit to all of our listeners. So thank you so much for sharing your knowledge today.
if I can just give a little tidbit to even one person, that makes me happy. And I'd love to be on again, Rose.
Thanks, Heidi. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Talking with the Experts, hosted by Rose Davidson. Make sure you have a look at our back catalogue over at talkingwiththeexperts.com. And be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any episode. We look forward to your company next time. Talking with the Experts.